Jack Merritt and Saskia Jones were two young people trying to make a positive difference. They worked in the unglamorous sector of offender rehabilitation with the organisation Learning Together. But their lives were cut tragically short, brutally short, by one of those they were trying to help. Usman Khan had spent 8 years in prison for terrorism offences. He was automatically released early on licence. 11 months later, he was invited to the Learning Together event at Fishmongers Hall near London Bridge. The bereaved families are scathing about the lack of monitoring of Khan by police and MI5 on a day they knew he was coming to London.
This inquest has answered many of our questions about how Jack came to be killed. It's clear to us that the arrangements put in place for managing Usman Khan after his release from prison in 2019 were not fit for purpose. Roles and responsibilities were unclear, communication between the agencies was inadequate, and leadership and coordination were weak.
Here you see Khan seated in one of the sessions at the start of the day. The woman he's speaking to is Saskia Jones. Less than 2 hours later, he had stabbed her and killed her. The inquest heard that during a break in events, Khan went to the toilets and taped kitchen knives to both of his gloves. This is Jack Merritt as he returned to the building after the break. He went to the same toilets where Khan stabbed him. Khan then went to the cloakroom, where Saskia Jones, the graduate he'd been speaking with earlier, was checking in her coat. He stabbed her once in the neck. She managed to get part of the way up these stairs before collapsing. People around her tried to perform CPR, but they couldn't save her life. Members of the public, including other convicted offenders at the event, grabbed whatever they could to keep Khan at bay. One used a fire extinguisher, another a narwhal tusk that had been on display. Khan ran out onto London Bridge, where he was tackled to the ground. He was wearing what appeared to be a suicide belt with explosives, and officers shot him dead. Police believe he'd strapped the belt to himself earlier that morning on the train journey from Stafford to London. The explosives were later found to be fake. The inquests heard that there had been intelligence gathered since Khan's release that suggested he did intend to carry out an attack, but the reliability of the intelligence was in question.
I think learning together matters, and it should matter.
In this promotional video for the charity, Khan spoke of how they were like a family to him. Saskia's actual family today condemned the executives of Learning Together.
We were particularly concerned after hearing the evidence given by the Learning Together directors, which allowed an insight to their attitude and seemingly scant regard they had for the fundamental safety of their staff, volunteers and attendees at the event at Fishmongers Hall. It could be said that their single-minded view of the rehabilitation of offenders, using Usman Khan, in our view, as a poster boy for their programme, significantly clouded their judgment.
One counter-terrorism officer told the inquests that Khan's attendance at the event was seen as a positive factor in his rehabilitation. This is what Scotland Yard had to say today.
The fact that, as the jury determined, there were omissions or failures in the management of the attacker and in the sharing of information and guidance by the agencies responsible is simply unacceptable, and I'm so deeply sorry we weren't better than this in November 2019.
The inquests have provided answers for the families of Saskia and Jack, but the biggest answer provides no comfort, for the killer was very much on the radar of the authorities.
Well, Simon's outside the Guildhall for us. Simon, being reminded there of that awful day, the families are clearly upset and angry, as we saw. You know, how could this have happened?
Well, we often hear, Julian, don't we, that they can't track everyone, but they should definitely have been tracking Khan. This was his first unescorted trip away from Stafford since his release from prison, and they knew that he had left prison more dangerous than when he went in. The jurors found today that there was unacceptable management, that the various agencies like MI5 and the police weren't talking to each other. Now, he was actually released because of an appeal court ruling. The parole board couldn't do anything about that. Today, the forewoman of the jury thanked everybody who had tackled Khan, including some convicted offenders, and she looked to the families then and she said, "We are so incredibly sorry. The world lost two bright stars that dreadful day."